Hello everyone and welcome back to the World Chess Championship match between Nepomniachtchi-Ding Liren. We are already in game 13, which is a success in itself because for the last 19 years, almost 20 in 2004, was the match Peter Leko versus Vladimir Kramnik, where 14 games were played. In the end, the match ended 7-7. And after yesterday's game, it was an absolute roller coaster. No one could predict what would happen in that one, and especially that blunder by Nepo, that f5 move, will definitely haunt him for a very long time. It's now time to come back into the match. 2 more games in the classical section until we go into rapid tiebreaks, and what it means for the players is Fabiano Caruana put it best. Now players should just put themselves into the mindset of this being a 2-game classical match, and then after that they are going into rapid tiebreak. So forget everything that happened so far. Don't forget the positions and what you've analyzed, because they might repeat, but they will try, of course, to forget the mistakes of the past. So that being said, let's check it out. This is game 13. The first ceremonial move was made by this gentleman here. Of course, I forgot to make it a bit smaller. Sorry about that. Yeah, the OBS interface is always super weird. I'm sure there's a shortcut to do this. I just never check. So here we go. There we go. All right. So the ceremonial first move was made by this gentleman here. It is Zhenis Kasimbek, the Akim, or the mayor of Astana. And as you can see, he is very, very serious about it. I think it's an e4 move. Nepo looking at it a bit like, okay, I was definitely planning on playing e4 here, so I'm gonna stick with that. So that being said, let's check it out. Nepo does go with pawn to e4, and I'm sure you guys are wondering, sorry about that, will we see another Ruy Lopez, or will we amidst this Ruy Lopez see the actual martial attack? But chances are Nepo will not allow this, as he's been having a very good success avoiding the martial. So here pawn to e4, we have pawn to e5, knight f3, knight to c6, and now bishop to b5. The Ruy Lopez is on the board, and a6 Ding once again goes for Morphy's defense. He didn't really achieve anything trying the Berlin, so it makes sense to try this whether or the martial happens or not. So here bishop to a4, knight to f6, and now castles by Nepo with bishop to e7, d3 now, avoiding the martial, of course, and pawn to b5, bishop to b3, d6, c3. We have castles, and now pawn to h3, rook to e1, a bit of a more popular move, but okay, pawn to h3 also played quite a lot, bishop to b7, and now bishop to e3. And this is now already a very, very rare continuation by Nepo. It's been only played by amateurs. The strongest player to ever play this move in this position was rated maybe 2000, maybe 1900 something. So unexplored territory, definitely in top tier chess. We have knight to a5, and now bishop back to c2, pawn to c5. Ding just playing principled moves that you would normally see. Knight f5, pawn to c5, then the knight goes back at some point, well, it's a question. When can white push d4, and when can black push d5? And the bishop on b7, of course, you hope that one day it will become a very strong piece. Knight b to d2, we have rook to e8, and now pawn to a4. And it is now basically as of move 13 that we have a completely new game, where at some point Nepo will try and capture on b5, and then Ding's b pawn might become a little bit weak. And that's why Ding should consider a move like maybe pawn to b4, but only consider it, because if pawn to b4, let's say you trade here, and white would even gladly capture away from the center here, captures, and knight to b3, you trade knights here, let's say captures, the bishop is now very strong, but black will play pawn to a5, and it's a question on whether or not you should play something like this. Of course, both black and white will try to use the c file. White might even put the bishop on c4 at some point, play b3, and it's going to be a very, very close setup. But Ding goes against this. He plays pawn to h6, and now Nepo again has a lot of choices. He can play a captures on b5. He can just continue development with rook to e1, or he could strike in the center with pawn to d4, and that is exactly what he does. He plays pawn to d4, and Ding captures. E captures on d4. It doesn't matter whether you capture with the e pawn or with the c pawn because you're going to capture with both. C captures, and now knight captures on d4. You could capture with the bishop, but then the knight just attacks it, so you have to go back, and it doesn't really make sense. So knight captures on d4. We have knight to c4 now, and already a very exciting position occurs where the bishop is attacked, the knight is sort of attacked, the b2 pawn is attacked. How can Nepo go about this? Well, he trades on c4. Another way to do it, he could play something like queen to f3, because you can never capture on b2. If Ding ever captures on b2, it's a trapped knight. Just rook to b1 attacks the knight, and now whatever you play, let's say knight captures on a4, just bishop captures, and the bishop on b7 will be hanging. So that's out of the question. So instead, after knight to c4, or rather after this queen to f3 move, you would have to play something like bishop to f8, and then the game continues. Captures. Let's say you capture on b5, knight captures on e3, queen captures, and you would get this position where Ding would be down a pawn, but he would have the bishop pair. So it's a standard trade-off. So after knight to c4, Nepo instead just trades here. Knight captures on c4, b captures, and now pawn to f3, just keeping everything solid here. If he was feeling a bit more adventurous, probably he's not due to what happened yesterday. But he might have gone for something like knight to f5. Again, it's a very discrete line that offers a pawn sacrifice for some very nice play. Let's say bishop to f8 because you really like your dark square bishop here. Rook to e1, as you will lose the e4 pawn. There's no question about it. It's attacked 3 times. Let's say bishop captures, and now rook captures on e4, and you can play bishop to d4. You're gonna put some pressure on that g7 pawn, and if we trade here, let's say captures and d5, black is up a pawn, but white will have some very nice pressure here against the g7 pawn. Then you bring the rook to d1 and so on. So again, it's a trade-off. But okay, pawn to f3 by Nepo, bishop to f8, and now bishop back to f2. A5 is the move that everyone wants to play here, and it does make sense. Once the knight moves, maybe the bishop can even come to b6, and you know that the pawn belongs on a5. Also, it clears the a4 square for the light square bishop, so you might try to dislodge the rook here. And the point is, after something like pawn to d5 and bishop to a4, you're again maybe going into Ding's territory here, because Ding would sacrifice the exchange here, no questions asked. Let's say bishop captures on e8, queen captures, and f captures on e4. F captures on e4, bishop captures. You would get this position where, okay, you're up the exchange, but the Ding has the bishop pair. This bishop is coming to c5, and it's going to be very hard to defend this. So at some point, this pawn might become weak, then the passed c pawn might become a problem. So it's not white who's pushing for anything here. So instead, just bishop to f2, and now pawn to d5. If you can play it, you know that pretty much in every position this either equalizes or gives you a better position. E captures on d5, knight captures, and now just bishop to e4 by Nepo, trying to neutralize the strong bishop on b7. The situation on the clock is an hour and 14 minutes for Nepo versus an hour and 26 minutes for Ding. And here Ding went into a really long thing, because there is quite a lot to consider here. There is you could play something like rook to b8. Seems like a very reasonable thing to do. Go after the b2 pawn. You also might consider something like queen to g5 with the idea of putting the knight to f4 and going for some sort of a checkmating attack. And Ding spent some 25 minutes, maybe a bit longer, and played rook to e5 here. And it's a move that no one could really explain. People said that it's a move that only Ding could explain, and he probably will at the press conference. I'm sure someone will ask him what happens if rook captures on e5, but that is for Ding to reveal if he will be willing to. And the problem is queen to g5 was such a strong option that it's hard to realize why Ding went against it. Now, you can't really allow knight to f4. It's such an ugly move to make. An engine, okay, gives something like pawn to h4, maybe that kicks away the queen, but you don't feel comfortable advancing your pawn in front with the king. So let's say you just trade here. Let's say bishop captures, rook to e1. Once the bishop to c5 comes, again, this does not look good for white at all. But okay, Ding played rook to e5. He has a bit of a different plan. Now comes rook to c1. Nepo just says, okay, I'm just going to develop the rook, attack the c4 pawn, and once you handle that, I'm going to continue the game. So rook to c8, and now knight to e2. And now all of the plans that Ding might have had don't really work in this particular setup. One does, and it really requires Ding to put his mind to it. If he plays pawn to f5 here, bishop to d4 is what would happen. And now, because it's very similar to what happened in the game, so it's very weird that Ding didn't go for this. Let's say f captures on e4. Of course, Ding would sacrifice the exchange. Bishop to c5 check, now winning the e3 square. Let's say king to h2 or h1, doesn't really matter. Knight to e3 now attacks everything here. So, of course, you have to trade queens. Queen captures with check, rook captures, and now your rook is hanging. Let's say rook f to e1. And again, you get this position where Nepo is up a rook, but the Ding has the mighty bishop pair. And, well, let's say e captures on f3, g captures, and bishop captures on f3. This looks very, very good for black. Ding decides against it, and he instead plays queen to e7. Again, now the problem is that he doesn't even have this bishop to c5 move, and Nepo immediately takes advantage of that. He plays queen to d4. As long as the queen was on d8, he would have the option of playing bishop to c5, and then the queen on d4 doesn't really do all that much. Now the queen on d4 could very well be the strongest piece on the board. We have pawn to f5. Now Ding does go for the exchange sacrifice. Bishop to g3 attacks the rook, and now rook captures on e4. Another thing you could consider is f captures on e4, and perhaps it was the better try, because after queen captures on e5, queen captures and bishop captures, there's of course e captures on f3, g captures, bishop to c5 check, bishop to d4, and now it seems like why did you go into all of this if you're going to lose the bishop pair? You're not. There's knight to f4, and this is how he could keep the bishop pair, because the threat is knight captures on e2 with check, winning the rook here, or rather the exchange. So we'd have to capture the knight, then bishop captures on d4 with check, king g2, and now you have this position where, yes, you're done the exchange, but the mighty bishop pair is fully operational. So it would again be a trade-off. But again, Ding decides not to go into this one. So he already declined f5 on the previous move, and now that he did play it, he declines to go into this. He goes for rook captures on e4 instead, and it's a very different line. F captures on e4, queen captures on e4, queen captures, f captures, and now just rook f to d1. Fabi also presented a very nice idea. For example, if knight to c3, then knight to b4, he thought that you could play rook captures on f8 because there's bishop to d6, but it doesn't work because after captures and rook here, bishop to d6 attacks the knight and the rook. The problem is there's always knight to d3, and this d3 square is pretty much what keeps Ding's position impenetrable in all of the lines that we can check. Let's say bishop captures, knight captures, and now black is either fine or better. So instead, after f captures on e4, we have rook f to d1, just going after that d file, because you know Ding wants to put the knight on d3. So at some point, if Ding attempts that, Nepo will have rook to d7, and he does go for it. Knight to b4, rook to d7. Now Nepo has some 47 minutes on the clock, Ding has 40 minutes on the clock, so plenty of time for both, as they only need to make 11 more moves. We have bishop to c5 with check, king to h2, and now bishop to c6. Attacks the rook, so you're never in time to capture on c4. Rook to c7 forces a trade here, captures, and now after captures, just bishop to d5, guarding the pawns here. And Ding does have the passed e-pawn, so it doesn't really matter that he's down the exchange. He has compensation, knight to c3, and now knight to d3. Attacks the rook here, rook to c2, and bishop back to c6. So the bishop pair doing a fine job keeping that rook at bay. We have pawn to a5. Now this is a very strong move, and king to f7. Ding starts bringing the king into the game. We have rook to e2, now threatening to win the pawn here, and just knight to c1, attacking the rook. And here, believe it or not, rook to e1 was played, and we have knight to d3, rook e2, knight to c1, rook to e1, and knight to d3. And it was in this position on move 39 that Jan Nepomniachtchi and Ding Liren agreed to a draw, and after 13 games in the World Chess Championship, the result is now still a tie. So there will be one more classical game. We'll see. Ding will have the white pieces. We'll see if he will try to push for the win, because he did have a very nice success with the white pieces, either winning or achieving winning chances, or will they just settle it peacefully, and then we will have tie breaks. Like I said, I'm happy with both. I would very much enjoy seeing an immortal game by either of them, but I would also enjoy them going into tie breaks, because I'm really enjoying their games so far. Pretty much all of them have been really enjoyable. Maybe, okay, that Berlin draw and didn't really, you know, inspire anyone to play chess, but other than that, you know, all the other games were really incredible. So yeah, here you resign because there's no good way to do it. He will continue to harass the pawn, and the Ding will just you know, keep attacking the rook, and basically none of them wanted anything to happen in this game. Ding had a couple of chances where he could have pushed for more, but he just didn't want to overdo it because he does not want to lose the penultimate round and then going into the final round in a must-win situation. That would be a horror. So basically now for Ding, he's in a World Chess Championship match where it's like you have one classical game, you win, you defeat Jan Nepomniachtchi with white in one classical game, and you become the world classical champion. That's the current situation for Ding now. It's the same for Nepo, only he has to beat the Ding with black in order to become world champion. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Will we see another crazy London or something? I don't think so. I think it's gonna be a pretty calm opening, but who knows? Maybe the Cole system, like Ding already attempted. So who knows what will happen? But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Pretty peaceful, you know, conclusion for round 13. We'll see what happens in the final round. I would like to thank Kim Torre Jensen, Jack Obit, Felipe Gorgios, Grandmaster Thomas Rusmon, and Micah Kennedy for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the World Chess Championship until it finishes. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.